From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. Justin Spears here with Bruce Pasco. We'll be joined later with PJ Brown, the Arizona women's basketball insider, talking about a big weekend for the U of A women's basketball team. It was a solid weekend for both basketball programs. They played 4 straight home games, and both programs walked away with sweeps. So it was a good weekend for the Arizona basketball program, and we're going to be talking about that here for the rest of this podcast episode. As always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast, located wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, and Audible. And you can also check out the Arizona basketball coverage on the Wildcaster app, which is free off the App Store and Google Play. However, not all the content is free. Some of it is subscriber only, so make sure you subscribe on the Wildcaster app or Tucson.com. So, Bruce, we have some mailbag questions we're going to answer. Some of it's Arizona basketball related. Some of it's Pac-12 realignment. A lot of people are wondering what the heck is going to happen with the Conference of Champions. But before we get into the mailbag, let's talk about what happened this past weekend. So Arizona is coming off a loss to Stanford, and they got dominated in points in the paint. I believe they were outscored by 18, which doesn't normally happen, especially against an inferior opponent like Stanford. But Arizona came back, and they outscored Utah and Colorado by a combined 44 points in the paint, Bruce. Absolutely unreal by the Arizona Wildcats. So, and what really fascinates me, Bruce, is that we talked about points in the paint and how they were able to dominate that category, but Azuolas Tubelis only played really an average of like 19 minutes. It was Umar Ballo, and then the forwards, Cedric Henderson and Pelle Larsson. Right. They were cutting. They were playing aggressive. Pelle Larsson had 11 points on just 2 shot attempts. So you like to see that out of players not named Azuolas Tubelis, and I feel confident in Azuolas Tubelis kind of finding his rhythm again. But I think what Arizona showed and their versatility with their lineups without Azuolas Tubelis, I think it bodes well for them. That's
exactly what I was going to say. Just the points in the paint, the last 2 games, Tubelis was there. I mean, he wasn't at his best. He had those 2 early fouls. Utah didn't play most of the first half, and Colorado was still kind of in and out. He did okay, but by his standards anyway. He did well for a lot of other players, but yeah, to have those other guys in there, and I think that does bode well. I kind of dug into that a little bit, just trying to look at all the different lineups and what works well. And they don't want to rely on a smaller lineup, but they can do it. And then the keys to that, as you said, is Pelle Larsson is really a key to that, because his numbers are, or his impact is probably better than his numbers. I think he scored 11 points on 1 field goal attempt or something, or 2 field goal attempts, something crazy like that. And then Henderson showing a little more aggression. When he brings that and he shows that, he really he really can help this team. There's no question about that.
So now Arizona, they turned their attention to the Arizona State Sun Devils, and we'll get into what ASU's been up to since the last time the Wildcats have played them. It feels like it's been forever since Arizona last played ASU. I mean, New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah.
Here we are a couple months later, and the Wildcats and Sun Devils are back at it once again. But it was also really cool, Bruce. I want to get your perspective on this. The number of visitors who came by McHale Center this past weekend. That was something that really caught my eye, and actually led that in my 5 takeaways from this past weekend. You had Justin Kier, who just dropped a triple-double with the Austin Spurs of the G League. And then you have some NBA players like Benedict Mathurin, Dalen Terry, Christian Coloco, and Zeke Naji, Josh Green were inducted into the Ring of Honor. And then in the back of the press conference room, you had Ronnie Turiaf sitting in watching Tommy Lloyd, the former Gonzaga star. I thought it was – and then Greg Hansen pointed out that Carrie Strug, Olympic gold medalist, was at McHale Center as well.
Yeah, I didn't see her, but yeah, I mean, it was NBA All-Star Weekend. I think that's the key. I think it was most impressive that Ben Mathurin got here literally 18 hours after playing in that Rising Stars game in Salt Lake. So my guess is, he got, somebody chartered a flight or something for him to get here. But still, it's, it shows something that these guys want to be here. I'm sure Arizona went out of their way to make it easy for them to get here and took care of them and all that. But still, they could, they could do any number of things with their rare off days that they have during that All-Star break, and they wanted to come here. So that does look pretty good for them.
Absolutely. And also really cool to see Lauri Markkanen play in the All-Star game. I'm going to be honest with you, Bruce. I didn't watch a second of the All-Star game.
Yeah.
I tried a little bit, and I had to turn it off. Just because the All-Star game, it's just so watered down.
Yeah.
I mean, the score was like 185 to 161.
It's just a dunk-a-thon. Nobody wants to play a lot of defense. They just want to have fun. And, to some extent, for some people, that's good. But if you're a purist, it's kind of hard to watch sometimes. And, you're right. But it was big that Markkanen made it. I mean, somebody on the Salt Lake radio asked me, did you see this coming? And I was like, no, but I don't think anybody did. I didn't. But once he got to be it was maybe December of his freshman year, you thought, okay, this guy's one and done. And then with his game, you could see it translating into an All-Star down the road. We didn't know, but not when he came here right away. You didn't see it.
Yeah.
But he really did,
I thought he would have been an All-Star, but after his first year with the Bulls, because he had such a promising start, and then injuries kind of derailed his career for a little bit. And plus, I don't think him and Billy Donovan really saw eye to eye in terms of what they wanted from his role. And unfortunately, they kind of chased him out of Chicago. Yeah. And then he had a decent year in Cleveland, and then he was used as a trade package for Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. Not a lot of people had expectations for Lauri, and then lo and behold, he's great for the Jazz.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I don't know that much about it, but I just know that it just seems to me that they wanted him to be the guy up there. Their coach, their staff really believed in him. They sought him out. And, I think that was a big part of it. They just making him the centerpiece and making him believe it, because he's kind of, he's in, kind of guy who might defer here and there. And I think he did even, here at Arizona at times. And for the Jazz to say, you are the guy, we need you to do this, I think that's really helped his game.
All right, now let's move over to Arizona versus ASU, Bruce. So last time these two teams played against each other, it was on New Year's Eve. And Arizona won 69-60. And Arizona, I mean, hey, they got out to what was a 15-point lead at halftime.
Yeah.
And they got out to a very promising start. And then all of a sudden, ASU comes out super fast, and they cut it to 2. And you think, man, ASU might pull off the upset special here. Arizona's in trouble, but the Wildcats were able to kind of hold off ASU. What do you remember about that game?
Yeah, it was that, it's kind of like the second half this year was kind of like the first half. I remember being up there last year where ASU got out to a hot start, and Arizona had completely erased that and took a half-point second half lead. I think it was a classic case of where you have a big lead, then somebody comes back because you're maybe letting up a little bit, and then they pull all the way back and they get tired.
Yeah.
And then Arizona pulled out the win. I think that's basically what happened.
Yeah, I think this time around though, Arizona, the difference between the last game and this game is Pelle Larsson is playing a lot better. And I can honestly say the same about Cedric Henderson, because ever since that switch, because remember, at this time, Pelle Larsson was still in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks later, that's when Tommy Lloyd makes that switch and puts Pelle Larsson back into his sixth-man role, Cedric Henderson into the starting role. And Cedric Henderson even said it, after the game against Colorado, that coming off the bench was more difficult for me at the start of the season, because everywhere I've gone, high school, college, everywhere, I've always had a starting role. So coming off the bench was a little bit of an odd transition. And Pelle Larsson's like, well, I mean, shoot, I've been doing this for the last few years. I don't mind doing this at all. And it was a great switch by Tommy Lloyd that I think is really going to pay dividends for them in March. But you look at the biggest differences between Arizona then and now. Obviously, that switch with Henderson and Pelle Larsson's the big one.
Yeah, I think the mental approach for both guys, as you said, was absolutely key, and especially Larsson being willing to do this. I mean, obviously, it was good for Henderson. It put him back in his rhythm. It gave him confidence. I think part of the problem with him was because he had all those years as a starter. He came here and he was like, okay, I'm sixth man now. I'm just, and it's a different deal. And these other guys are the go-to players, and so he kind of put himself in the back seat a little bit. And I think now he's accelerated. And it was really interesting the other day at Colorado when they struggled early, and he came out from the, I think it was on the right wing, and drove in for elevated and drove for a dunk with a fierceness I have not seen from him all season. And I just thought, this guy, something's gotten into him. I think it's really been good for him to be in that starting lineup and to be a guy they need right away to do things. And then Larson, on the other hand, like you said, just willing to do that and then bring that energy off the bench, being comfortable with it, and not having the big ego where he has to be introduced at the beginning of the game and all that kind of stuff, which everybody does love at some point, but willing to do that. And the only drawback for him is he started one too many games to qualify for Pac-12 Sixth Man of the Year, so he won't be able to defend that title.
What's been going on with ASU lately? Because, once they lost to Arizona, they won 4 in a row. They swept the Washington schools, swept the Oregon schools on the road, which I thought was a pretty big one for them. I mean, they smacked Oregon in Eugene 90-73, and then they lose to both LA schools. They get swept by them at home. They get swept on the road by the Washington schools, split Oregon. Then they sweep the Bay Area and split the Mountain schools. It seems like it's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde from the ASU Sun Devils this year. I mean, they have the talent, and they're super long too. But for some reason, they can't find consistency.
They do, they've often been that way. I mean, this is a little bit related to schedule. If you really look at UCLA and UCLA coming in, well, they're really good teams, so they lost those. And then going on the road to Washington, those are 2 tough games to play. They had to go overtime to beat Washington. I think probably the surprise was losing to Colorado at home last weekend, but even Colorado's been up and down too. So it's just weird. But I think in general, I don't know, but it does strike me that ASU comes out so hot out of the gate a lot of years under Bobby Hurley, and they surprise everybody, and players love Bobby Hurley. His players love him. They love playing for him. They play this really hard. This year's team. And so I just wonder sometimes, do they get to the point in that mid-season, late January, where it's kind of like the dog days of the season, and maybe they hit a wall a little bit. But if that's true, and I don't know if it is, if that's true, that I think they're getting past it now. Now they see they've got 3 huge opportunities. They're on the bubble of the tournament. They got 3 huge opportunities to work their way in. Playing Arizona and then going to LA, and I think it was Des Cambridge said something on the TV about people were telling them they felt bad they had to play these 3 games. He was like, no, we want to play these 3 games. I can't wait. And if that's their attitude,
okay. Hey.
We'll see. It should be it should be fun to watch them. See what happens.
Yeah, because I honestly I see kind of the writing on the wall here, because I feel like Bobby Hurley has reached the ceiling at ASU, and I feel like there's no support for ASU basketball, really. And I kind of got that feel when I went to Desert Financial Arena and I took a lap around the concourse.
It's been worse.
And you have,
it's been worse.
And you have signs flickering on the concourse. Yeah. Like they can't even fix their signs. I went into their bathroom. It was so out of date and just disgusting. I'm like, man, I look at McHale Center and I compare it to Desert Financial Arena, and it's just night and day different between Arizona and ASU and the basketball programs. And so I feel like maybe Bobby Hurley, if he's able to get really good fight out of his team, maybe he kind of looks around and takes a job somewhere in the Big East or the A-10. I don't know, but I feel like Bobby Hurley in his days at ASU are a little numbered right now.
Yeah, that could happen. It's a tough place, I think.
And I like him a lot. I think
he likes
he's a good
it there.
coach.
He's making good money. It's Pac-12 job. He's he can get in the tournament potentially every year. I don't know. There's always been there used to be speculation back in the day that he would go to Duke. Well, obviously that didn't happen. I don't know, but yeah, it could happen. I mean, he's probably reaching the average life expectancy of a Pac-12 head coach. They usually, are around about that long. So, it wouldn't, for one reason or another, he might leave. But but he's also got a good niche. It's we'll see. I mean, if this season ends on a good note, I mean, he's shown if they do finish pretty well, he's shown that he can be pretty resourceful and fill out a team like that where expectations are pretty low and really get something out of them, and that does bode well for him.
Yeah. Arizona, UCLA, USC. That's a very tough stretch for ASU. And then you go right into the Pac-12 tournament. And if you don't finish strong, you're not going to get the friendliest seeding, and you're going to play a really good team on that Wednesday game. So, we'll see.
They're tied for 4th now, but it's hard to imagine them staying in the top. I mean, they might have to win 2 to keep that 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's and you're right. If they don't, then they're looking at Wednesday. Maybe they can pick up a win on Wednesday, but they would almost certainly have to win Thursday. To make to have an argument for the NCAA tournament at that point.
All right, Bruce. I know you got to take off because you're a busy man, but let's get into these mailbag questions. Thank you to all of our listeners who sent mailbag questions on Twitter. Of course, we do this every week, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for the next mailbag. This one comes from Bayzona. Bayzona asks, is Arizona in a sense bonded to ASU when considering a conference move? Is it always going to be a package deal? I feel like it is. Arizona and ASU are always going to be tied together, especially when it comes to conference realignment. So whether they stay in the Pac-12 together, whether they go to the Big 12 together, it's you don't get one or the other. It's definitely a both deal.
I think so. I mean, nobody's said that directly, but you got to. There's 2 really factors at all this realignment. One is the TV networks. What do they say? What are they offering? What do they want? Who do they want in the conferences? And the other is the presidents who make the decisions. And the president's bosses is the regents. And the regents are going to want Arizona and ASU to stay together. That's the way it's been for, however many years. And so it's hard to imagine that. I mean, maybe there's some scenarios, but I would only see it happening if it was equal. Like, say, if Arizona was dragged to the Big 12 mostly for basketball reasons, and ASU went to a newfangled Pac-12 for whatever reason, which is hard to imagine. So I don't see that. Nobody said 100% that's the case, but I would think it's pretty close.
LZ2 Hype says, please tell me you're on board with a Pac-ACC merger. It's the only thing that makes sense culturally. Big 12 is truck stops and gas stations. I feel like this is Bill Walton's burner account.
That's what I was thinking too.
I would love to see Pac-12 ACC merger for basketball purposes, right? You think about Duke, North Carolina. I mean, you're facing these schools more so on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
Plus, you still get to keep some notable conference opponents like Oregon, which obviously, I mean, you alluded to a couple weeks ago. I mean, Oregon has kind of turned into Arizona's biggest rival in basketball, and now that with UCLA going to the Big Ten, Oregon and Arizona could be the new Pac-12 great rivalry. But I think merging with the ACC would be amazing. But, hey, don't discount the Big 12, especially when it comes to basketball, because Kansas versus Arizona twice a year would be amazing. Arizona versus Houston, Baylor, Texas Tech. There are a number of great teams in the Big 12 that would certainly give Arizona some notable conference opponents. So I would love to see the Pac-12 and ACC merge, but I also wouldn't mind the Big 12 as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it gets back to television, and would they offer something, for some kind of combination conference? I know that was talked about a little bit earlier. It doesn't seem like it's much lately, and everyone's kind of waiting to see what the Pac-12 does here. But you do wonder, and again, I'm just reading this stuff like everyone else. I'm not in the middle of it, but it does strike me. Yeah, the Pac-12 would be, or the Big 12, would be really good basketball-wise, but basketball has never been driving the bus in the realignment, and it seems to be secondary on every level, and because of the way they value the media dollars going towards football. And so then they're looking at Arizona and ASU as football schools, and what do they bring there? And that's an equation I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the ACC thing, I think you're right. I think culturally that's a very good point. Culturally, if you're looking at it at a presidential level and a regent level, yes, that's exactly right.
Coast to coast.
They see themselves as high-level research institutions. A lot of those ACC schools are as well. It would be very good that way. But obviously, geographically, it would be really problematic. It would be great in basketball, men's and women's, and it would be manageable in football. But every other sport, it would be really problematic to be. You'd have to really have just an occasional interconference trip in some of those sports, or a jamboree or something where you combine games together. It wouldn't make sense to have your volleyball teams flying back and forth across the country, and things like that. There's been a lot of questions about USC and UCLA. How are their non-revenue teams going to do for that kind of thing? That's just the Big Ten.
Yeah.
A lot of questions there, but it is an interesting possibility, but it doesn't seem terribly likely.
Jason Canis asked, will Larry Scott go down as the poster child for why finding and paying a CEO/leader is so important? Has a single person done more damage to an organization ever? Short of those committing felonies, I have to really scratch my head for someone who sank an organization more. Harsh words for Larry Scott. But when you look at the current state of the Pac-12, now George Kliavkoff, I kind of feel bad for him because he is really treading water right now and doing whatever he can to keep the conference afloat. And it's all because of the years of Larry Scott as the leader of the Pac-12. And they just fell so far behind in the media scope of college sports. I mean, the ACC, SEC, the Big Ten, they all have all these networks that are easily accessible, and their fans can easily access them. The Pac-12 network is so difficult to access. Bruce, I have YouTube TV.
Yeah.
Whenever Arizona plays on Pac-12 network and they're on the road, I have to go to the ESPN Tucson station to watch the game. I can't watch it at home because the radio station has Pac-12 network. I don't.
Yeah.
And the Pac-12 network set the conference so far behind, and this is where we're left with George Kliavkoff trying to get deals with Apple TV, which I think would be huge for the conference, but it's a very unfortunate situation. It really is. He took a gamble, and he gambled back in 2011 or whenever the contract was made, and it was a lot of money at the time. And there was a lot of excitement. A lot of people believed in Larry Scott at that point. And his gamble with the Pac-12 network was that, they wanted to own it all, so they had control of it. And, and then they tried to leverage it with the carriers, all over the country, and basically didn't want to lower the price to let anybody else have it. And that's why they never got into DirecTV, because DirecTV wouldn't budge. DirecTV said your product isn't worth it, basically. And there was that, and then you had coaches are upset because they're not getting the maximum exposure and this and that, and it was a gamble. It was interesting because you look at the Big Ten's model, and Big Ten network, I think, owned by mostly Fox or half owned or whatever it is, and that was the thing they were concerned about, was that they didn't want to give up that control, but it's worked out pretty well for the Big Ten. Yep.
So, but in the Big Ten, the other thing is, and this is not Larry Scott's fault. The Big Ten, you have more passion per school, I believe, and you have more subscribers who are going to call their carriers saying, you have to get DirecTV because I need to see my Iowa Hawkeyes, or whatever. If that was the case, you don't have that quite as much in the Pac-12, I think. Yeah. Just because I'm from California, I've lived here in Arizona for a long time. I went to a Big Ten school. I've seen both of these. It's different culturally out there, and so that's part of it too. It's not 100%. It's not 100% the Pac-12's fault.
All right, Bruce. Big Shot Rob 22 asked, do you think recruiting will pick up? I always thought the IARP investigation was holding things up, but now that it's resolved, I still haven't seen recruiting pick up a whole lot. But here's the thing, though. The transfer portal has kind of thrown a wrench into college recruiting, right? Because Arizona, they were able to get Courtney Ramey and Cedric Henderson from the transfer portal. They got Justin Kier a couple years ago from the transfer portal. Umar Ballo was in the portal. So the transfer portal has really changed college basketball recruiting. And plus, the way that the roster is constructed right now for Tommy Lloyd, he doesn't need to go out and get a complete influx of talent. You can just add really 1 to 2 guys every single recruiting class and be okay, and then add in those transfer portal guys.
Yeah, I think it has gotten better, or at least the IRP thing. I think back in 18, 19, 20, it was definitely affecting those things. And ironically, well, not ironically, but just maybe fortunately, as it turned out for Arizona, if you remember that 2020 COVID year, Sean Miller, before COVID hit, had missed on a lot of 5-star players. Because of that, He ended up going on the internet in April of 2020 and pulling in Azuolas Tubelis, Kirk Risa, and just going after some players that he probably wouldn't normally. That worked out pretty well, and it turns out Tommy Lloyd has carried those guys forward. Ben Matherin, well, no, they got Matherin before COVID hit, but now I think that probably the biggest difference is it is clear as far as the IRP. That's true, but I think Tommy Lloyd's just a more selective recruiter. He's more, he just hands out a handful of scholarship offers to domestic kids, and basically, like you said, is relying on the transfer portal and international players. And he doesn't need that many guys. Whereas with Sean Miller, of the top 25 guys, maybe 10 of them, maybe 15 of them might have offers or implied offers or something like that to come to Arizona. With Tommy Lloyd, it might be 2 or 3 at the most.
Bruce, this last question is mostly for me. It comes from Jason Shear. And Jason asks, is working with Bruce Pascoe as magical as it seems to Mike, Luke, and I? And I will say absolutely yes. Bruce Pascoe is a pro's pro. He never wavers, is a true professional, always stays to himself, and is a guy that I've learned a lot from. So, Bruce, appreciate you and your professionalism. Love working with you, man.
Shear is a master of many meanings and sarcasm and all that, so who knows? But no, I mean, I get cranky. That's not always true, Justin. But obviously try and be a pro. That's all we can do. But it's not always easy.
I know it's not always easy, but you're a pro, man, and love your work. I've always read your work growing up here in Tucson, and now that I get to work alongside you, man, it's a true honor and a privilege. So,
but I'll say, I mean, Shear and some of these other guys here, they work hard and they have a lot of other stuff going on. I'm lucky in that all I have to do is cover the basketball and the news and this and that and produce every day. But that's my sole focus. A lot of these other guys like Jason, just they're working their butt off covering all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. All right, Bruce, I know you got busy things going on this week leading up to Arizona versus ASU at McHale Center. Senior Day, going to be an interesting Senior Day. It's because the Wildcats are going to honor a couple of one-year rentals.
I've long had I mean, it's hard to say that they should just get rid of Senior Day, but it almost feels like they should, or at least recast it, because it's not what it is anymore. I mean, they're going to have a guy, Jordan Maines, who played 4 years as a walk-on. That's a real senior. When Dusan, Ristix, and Parker Jackson Cartwright, that was a real Senior Day. But most of the time nowadays, it's grad transfers. And then the other thing is the unspoken, is this going to be Azuolas' last game? Is this going to be X and X last game? Is so-and-so going to transfer? Is that going to be his last game? Who knows? But, it's... And the funny thing is, with the COVID exception, you've got guys like, and I don't know about Maines, but sometimes these guys who play 4 years, they go through the ceremony. I think Terrell Brown did this. He went through the ceremony here. And Senior Day for Terrell Brown, and then he went and played at UW next year and scored, 29 points on Arizona or something. Like, thanks for letting me be a senior. It's just weird. It's it's just weird. I don't know what you do, but it's not what it used to be.
Oh, well, it should be an interesting Senior Day on Saturday when Arizona faces ASU. For all the men's basketball coverage, find Bruce on Twitter and check him out on Tucson.com and the Wildcast app. Now, let's transition to talk some U of A women's basketball with star reporter PJ Brown. All right, we got PJ Brown joining us for the second half of the Wildcast podcast. PJ, I don't think we have really much to talk about when it comes to the Arizona women's basketball team. Just a casual sweep of the mountain schools, and both these schools are ranked, right? So Utah ranked number 4, Colorado ranked number 21. Just easy wins for the Arizona Wildcats. Not really anything noticeable about that. As a matter of fact, I think that this weekend was huge for the Arizona women's basketball team, PJ, and I know you feel the same because, after they lost to Stanford, you wondered, are they going to have any quality wins moving forward to really help out their NCAA tournament resume and really give them a boost to host the first round of the tournament? And I think beating the number 4 ranked team in the country, also beating a number 21 team, I think that certainly helps you. And how they did it was awesome. Shaina Pellington putting up 35 points against Utah. She's not only Pac-12 Player of the Week, but she's National Player of the Week, and deservedly so. So it was all in all a pretty solid weekend for the women's basketball team at McKale Center. You were there to watch it all, PJ. What stands out to you about these 2 wins?
Sure. First of all, let's start with the wins and what they mean. You can beat the number 4 team in the country, and it's a big deal, but you can beat them in December or the first week of January. And that's good, but you can beat them in February, and that counts more because it's down the stretch. And it means that you're getting better. It shows that you're getting better. And do we dare say peaking at the right time? We need to see what happens this weekend. But it's really interesting because typically the Wildcats don't play really great in February, but then they played well in March a number of times, winning the WNIT and going to the national championship game of the NCAAs. So to come into February and to play so well and to beat these top 25 teams, especially a number 4 team in Utah, and the way they did it, like you said, they really came out. They're playing the best ball of the season. Let's face it. They're playing great on defense. They're playing really well on offense. And to put it together right now means so much when you're trying to, polish off that resume, right? Finish it off in a good way. I personally, and I could be way wrong because I am not on the NCAA selection committee, so I want to give that caveat. But I think beating the number 4 team in the country and then following it up with another good win, I think that puts you in the top 16 and you host.
Absolutely.
I really do. And if you look at it, they beat, I think, 5 now top 25 ranked teams this season. I think that just does it. And even when you went to Utah, it was a 1-point loss. So, we've talked about how important that even that loss was away. But I think that puts you right up there. If they're not in this top 16 reveal on Thursday night, at halftime of the Tennessee game, I believe it is, then they must be 17. And they're just waiting to see how they finish off and what they do, if they win the first round or so, or the Pac-12 tournament. I believe that they're right there. I've said that all along. I told you that, Justin, that I think that they're right there. They're on the cusp of hosting. And I think that these 2 games went a long way to do it. And now when we turn to Shaina, I'm actually writing a story about Shaina this afternoon, so everybody can read it in the Wildcaster app Wednesday night, Thursday before the game. On Thursday night. The game doesn't start with Oregon until 8:00 on Tucson time. So everybody has a lot of time to waste until that game starts. So you can read my stories. Shaina is just, we've seen a lot from Shaina over the 3 years that she's actually played for the Wildcats. And it seems like right now, she's putting all of it together. She's playing on a different level. 3 games, the last 3 games she's played really well, including the 35-point performance against Utah.
Yeah.
And earning her all those awards. And on Wednesday, she was the NCAA women's basketball starting 5. She was in that. These are things that, Coach Adia Barnes is going to say that she expects to see from Shaina, that Shaina has that potential and that ability. And for her to put it together down the stretch when it's sort of everything's on the line and it's her senior year is a pretty special thing for all of us to watch, especially as we watched her grow throughout her time here. Remember, she was the last of the group that sat out in the transfer year after she transferred from Oklahoma. And that was always a tough year for student athletes. She came back that first year that the team played in the national championship game, and the national championship game was her best game of the season. And that's when we saw more of what Shaina was capable of doing. And then last year she had some game winners, and she just really started to grow into that point guard role. And this year, even more, she's playing more within herself, understanding her role on the floor, and also reading defensives better to know when to drive, when not to drive, when to distribute to a teammate. And now what we've seen in the last 3 games is all that hard work on her outside shot is now paying off. It takes a long time. At the beginning of the summer, before the season started, I should say, when I wrote a story on Shaina tinkering with her shot, her outside shot, she was working with U of A assistant coach Salvo Copa. And I do remember at the time him telling me most players don't want to do that because you get worse before you get better. And
Yeah.
when he said worse, he means worse. And we did see that struggle. We did see her missing a lot of outside shots. Teams didn't defend her there. Remember, they're sagging on her because of that.
Yep.
Once she's able to put it together, teams don't know how to defend her. And then that is another strength for the Wildcats down the stretch.
Shaina Pellington's a unique story because, she came in as a transfer from Oklahoma. And, we heard some things about how her career ended at Oklahoma. And you thought, okay, she's going to have to come a long way. But you saw the talent there. And you saw the way that she played for Team Canada. And then she stepped into a role that's pretty daunting as a player. You got to be the one that replaces Ari McDonald, who is arguably the greatest player in program history. And as a matter of fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who would say any other player besides Ari McDonald is the greatest of all time in Arizona basketball history. But she's been able to kind of do it in her own way. And no, she's not Ari McDonald, but I think Shaina Pellington has certainly left her mark on the program. And when you look at 35 points this past weekend, it was really cool to see how far she's come. Now, she's always had the game, but for her to put up the kind of performance like that in her last game at McHale Center, it's pretty symbolic, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. Shayna's always Shayna. And I don't like to sort of compare one player to another. She's always gone on her own path to get where she is now, like all players do. And it was hard coming in to replace a legend like Ari McDonald. It would have been hard for anybody. But Shayna's handled it pretty well, and she's really matured during her time at U of A. And, to see her to do that on Friday night, she didn't miss a shot until the third quarter. I mean, what a performance that was. She just, no matter what she did on the court, she was just scoring. And then along with that, she got steals and she did other things. And I believe in Sunday's game, she may have had 5 assists. So it's like even more than the 19 points, right? It's almost like she scored 29 or more than that. She really impacted both games. And it's just a testament to the hard work that she's put in, and that even when she's faced adversity, she pushed through it. And to be in this moment right now for her to be able to lead her team into, in her senior year, when it was like possibly the final games of her career at McHale Center, and to do that and not be overwhelmed by the moment says a lot about Shaina. It really does.
Absolutely. Before we end, PJ, turning our attention to this upcoming trip. So the game against the Oregon Ducks in Eugene is set for 8 p.m. Tucson time. You can watch that game on Pac-12 networks. And then the Wildcats are ending the regular season against Bendu Yaney and the Oregon State Beavers on Saturday at 1 p.m. So what do you think about this upcoming road trip? And I think it's pretty cool that Arizona gets to face Bendu Yaney to end the regular season.
Yeah, that is kind of neat. You know, this is not easy because it's regardless of the seasons that Oregon and Oregon State are having now. It's pretty unprecedented that they're sort of in the bottom of the pack, as you would say, this season. They're just going through some rough patches. But for both teams, the future looks bright because they have really great freshmen in Grace Van Sluten and Chance Gray for Oregon, and Reagan Beers for Oregon State. It's never easy to win in those places. It's just really hard. And also the Wildcats just have to come out and sort of play like they've been playing, right? With this confidence, with playing like a team, and they put it all together. They just need to keep doing this. And then they have a shot at getting another sweep or possibly even splitting. But in the Pac-12, nothing's easy. They're on the road, which is odd for Arizona. They usually finish at home, at least during the Dia Barnes coaching era. They finish at home, and so that'll be a little bit tough. They haven't been on the road for, I believe, since the UCLA sweep. So they just have to come out and play their games. Again, those matchups are always a little difficult. Even if they end up winning by 10 or 12, it wasn't an easy 10 or 12 point win. So, but they have a chance here to, finish out on a big sweep here, winning five in a row. Yep. And that would be something special for the Wildcats. As I said before, they usually don't finish the regular season so well. And then they have that meeting, they come together and have a meeting, and then they can do well in the postseason. So this could be something different that we're seeing for the Wildcats. They could be changing history here a little bit and playing well in February and finishing on a high note, and then carrying that into March postseason. So we'll see what happens on Thursday night.
And then it's going to be a true March Madness, because on the first day of March, that's when the Pac-12 tournament first round is. But I'd imagine that the Wildcats aren't going to be playing until that Thursday, correct, PJ?
Yeah, I think we're not finished yet. They have the 4th spot right now. If everything were to end today, they own that 4th bye, which means they would be playing on Thursday. But they take care of business and make sure they have that 4th spot. There also is a slim possibility that they could move up to 3rd if they win and probably Colorado loses both games. There's that slim possibility, but you never know. That's why they play.
Absolutely. All right, Arizona ending the regular season this week. First game against Oregon is on Thursday at 8 p.m. And then the matchup against Bendu Yaney, former Arizona Wildcat, and the Oregon State Beavers is on Saturday at 1 p.m. And then Viva Las Vegas. Arizona will get ready for the Pac-12 tournament and leave one last stamp before they get ready for March Madness. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. PJ, always appreciate your insight. Make sure you follow PJ on Twitter and find all of her work on Arizona women's basketball on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. And that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Wildcast podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And please be sure to download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play today. Thanks for listening.